Not every reflection belongs to you. Julie thought she was starting over. A new apartment. A quiet life. But behind the wardrobe, something was waiting, something shaped like her, wearing her face, and eager to take her place. Some doors don't lead out. They lead in, and down. This is the door that was never there. Be careful what you open.
Julie was 33, a woman etched with the lines of recent heartache and the weariness of a life that felt perpetually unmoored. After a painful, drawn-out breakup that had left her emotionally raw, and years spent chasing a string of precarious, short-lived jobs, she finally found apartment 7B. It was small, a modest studio in a nondescript building on the quieter edge of the city, but it felt quiet, manageable, and, most importantly, affordable. It was nothing special, a place to simply exist, to rebuild. She didn't question, not really, why there were no photos of the inside online when she'd signed the lease. The rent was good, and she was tired. The first week passed in a blur of routine. She went to her new, stable, if unremarkable, job, cooked simple meals, and took long, solitary walks through the unfamiliar streets, hoping the rhythm of her feet would ease the persistent ache in her mind. The apartment was a sanctuary of sorts, its quiet hum a stark contrast to the chaotic noise of her past. Then, on the 8th day, she noticed it. She was reorganizing her bedroom wardrobe, a built-in monstrosity of dark, heavy wood that occupied an entire wall. As she struggled to push a particularly stubborn hanger into the far corner, her hand brushed against something unexpected. It was a door. A narrow, half-sized door, no more than 4 feet tall, perfectly flush with the back wall of the wardrobe. It was painted a stark, matte black, so dark it seemed to absorb the light, and adorned with an old, rusted iron latch. Julie stared at it, her brow furrowed in confusion. She was certain it hadn't been there before. She would have noticed it. She prided herself on her attention to detail, a habit honed by years of precarious living. She ran her fingers across its surface. It was cold. Rough. Like it hadn't been touched in years, maybe even decades. There was no visible frame, no seam that suggested it could open. It was simply there. An impossible, inky rectangle of wood. A prickle of unease, faint but distinct, started in her stomach. She closed the wardrobe doors, then reopened them, as if expecting the door to vanish. It remained. Later that afternoon, driven by a nagging sense of disbelief, Julie descended to the building manager's office. Mr. Henderson, a stoic man with a perpetually furrowed brow and a thick mustache, listened patiently as she described her peculiar discovery. He looked at her, utterly bewildered. "A door, you say? In 7B?" he asked, his voice rough with genuine confusion. He shook his head slowly. "Ma'am, there is no door in that unit. Not one hidden in the wardrobe, certainly. I've managed this building for 2 decades. Every unit's floor plan is identical. There's no second door in 7B. His eyes, usually clouded with the mundane frustrations of property management, held a genuine, disconcerted honesty. Julie returned to her apartment, the manager's words echoing in her ears. He hadn't dismissed her with condescension, but with genuine bewilderment. Was she imagining things? Was the stress finally getting to her? She opened the wardrobe again. The black door was still there, an undeniable presence in the mundane reality of her bedroom. That night, she couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the closed wardrobe doors, her mind racing. At exactly 3:12 a.m., she heard it. A faint, singular thud. The sound of old iron striking wood. The door had rattled, just once. A soft, undeniable sound in the absolute quiet of the apartment. She pulled the covers tighter, trying to convince herself it was the building settling, a branch hitting the window. Anything but what she feared it was. The next night, it happened again. This time, it wasn't just a thud. A slow, deliberate rattle of the latch. Then, a faint dragging sound, like something heavy being slowly, agonizingly pulled across a rough surface. The sound of something waking up. Something stirring. Julie lay frozen, her breath caught in her throat, her eyes fixed on the wardrobe. And the night after that, the wardrobe doors were ajar. Just a crack. A sliver of blackness. Driven by a morbid, irresistible pull, Julie pushed them open fully. The black door within the wardrobe was no longer closed. It was ajar, a sliver of deeper, inky darkness visible beyond its edge. A cold, musty draft wafted from within. Inside was a short, narrow tunnel, dimly lit by a faint, ambient glow that seemed to emanate from nowhere in particular. The walls of the tunnel were rough, unvarnished wood, like the inside of a forgotten crawlspace. It felt tight, oppressive. At the far end of this claustrophobic passage, another black door, identical in every chilling detail to the first, stood waiting. She hesitated, her entire being screaming at her to turn back, to slam the wardrobe doors shut and never look again. But curiosity, a dark, primal curiosity, outweighed her fear. It always did. She had to know. She had to understand. With a deep, shaky breath, she got out of bed and, on her hands and knees, began to crawl through the tight passage. The air grew colder with every inch she moved, and the scent changed, becoming faintly metallic, like old, dried blood mixed with dust. Her heart hammered against her chest like a drumbeat in a cave, each beat echoing in the suffocating silence. The second black door opened with an unnerving groan, a sound of ancient wood complaining against its hinges. Julie pushed it inward, her eyes widening in disbelief. What she saw made her stomach twist, a sickening lurch of disbelief and terror. It was her apartment. Exactly the same. Her living room, her small kitchen, her half-empty mug on the coffee table. But it wasn't empty. She was inside it. Or rather, a version of her. Sleeping peacefully in her own bed, undisturbed. Her body. Her face. Her exact likeness, serene and oblivious. Julie stepped closer, her mind reeling, trying to process the impossible. Was this a mirror? A dream? A hallucination? The other Julie looked so real, so tangible. And then, with a slow, deliberate grace, the sleeping version of herself opened its eyes. And smiled. It wasn't a natural smile. It was too wide, too slow, and it didn't reach her eyes, which remained cold, depthless, and utterly devoid of warmth. They were her eyes, yet they held an ancient, predatory intelligence that sent a fresh wave of terror through Julie. Julie screamed. A sound that tore from her throat, raw and desperate. She scrambled backwards, scrambling frantically, blindly, through the tight tunnel, her breath shallow, her skin cold and clammy. She pulled herself through the small opening in the wardrobe, desperate to escape the impossible horror. But the passage was gone. The black door behind the wardrobe had vanished. The wall was solid. Immovable. As if it had never been there. The wood grain was seamless, undisturbed. She pounded on it, her fists bruising against the unyielding surface. She screamed until her throat ached, a hoarse, ragged sound of despair. She clawed at the wall, her fingernails tearing at the wood, leaving faint streaks of red. But no one could hear her. No one would believe her. Days passed. Then weeks. Julie was trapped, a ghost in her own home, a silent, invisible observer. She watched the other version of herself, the imposter, take over her life with unnerving ease. The other Julie went to work, smiled at neighbors with a chilling emptiness, even redecorated the living room, moving her favorite armchair to a spot where it felt utterly alien. It lived her life, loved her things, breathed her air, while Julie herself faded, becoming less real with each passing moment. Julie tried to write messages in the steam on the bathroom mirror, her ghostly fingers tracing desperate pleas. She screamed when someone visited, hoping to attract attention, to break through the veil of her unseen prison. She even tried to slam doors, to throw objects, to make any sound, any disturbance. But nothing worked. She was a silent, helpless observer, her existence unacknowledged by the world she had once inhabited. Sometimes, late at night, when the apartment was steeped in a silence that felt heavier than usual, the new Julie would stand directly in front of the bedroom mirror. And she would stare. Her eyes, those cold, depthless eyes, would fix on her own reflection. And then, she would whisper something. Julie couldn't hear it, her ears now attuned only to the silence of her own despair. But she could read the shape of the words on the imposter's lips. You're trapped. You're fading. This is mine now. The building remains. Apartment 7B is still occupied, its mundane existence a cruel mockery of Julie's predicament. But every now and then, a tenant from the floor below swears they hear it. A faint knocking sound coming from inside their ceiling. Soft. Rhythmic. And always, precisely, at 3:12 a.m. Some say the knocking is getting louder, growing more insistent with each passing night. Some say it's not knocking at all, but faint footsteps, shuffling across the floor above, where no one should be walking. Some say it's a warning, a desperate plea from someone trapped between worlds. But Julie knows the truth. She is still there, pressed against the solid wall of her bedroom, her existence a fading echo. She knows she will never get out. She knows the knocking is her. The footsteps are her. The whispers on the mirror are what they want her to hear. And sometimes, if the night is particularly still, you might hear a faint, desperate scratching coming from the wall where the wardrobe once stood. She's still trying to get back through. She's still trying to be seen.
Some disappear with a scream. Others with a whisper. Julie didn't vanish. She was replaced. Her life stolen by something that looked like her, something that now smiles in mirrors and walks in daylight. And though she's fading, her presence lingers, behind the wall, inside the silence, beneath the floorboards. Listen closely, and you might hear her scratching to be let back in. The door is gone. But sometimes, late at night, you'll swear it's opening again.